So I'm Sheila. I'm Sheila Weinberg. I'm the founder and CEO of Truth in Accounting. Thank you for attending the session, Why Data Standards for Government Reporting. We believe that all levels of government derive their just powers from the consent of the governed. Therefore, government officials are responsible for reporting their actions and the results of those actions in a transparent and comprehensive way to people. Providing accurate, timely information to citizens and the media is essential for government responsibility and accountability. A lack of transparency in government financial information, budgets, and financial reports makes it difficult for governments to meet this democratic responsibility. At Truth in Accounting, years ago, once we realized that state and local governments were not required to put their pension liability on their face of the balance sheet, we took it upon ourselves we realized that elected officials and citizens did not have the financial information they needed to make knowledgeable decisions. I went down to Springfield and mentioned the government's true financial pension liability, and the elected officials were like, no, that's a lot larger number, or didn't realize it existed. So we took it upon ourselves, silly as we are, to recast each state's balance sheet to include those liabilities. Initially, we thought this would be difficult and time-consuming, but once we started to review financial reports, we discovered that the process was nearly impossible. In fact, there were several times where I put my head in my desk and said, maybe we could return the grant money. The reports were voluminous and in PDF formats. This meant, as you can imagine, and unfortunately many of you have done, the data needed to be re-entered into spreadsheets or a database. Obviously, this process was and continues to be a great deal of time and effort, and gathering the information, extracting it, reviewing it, checking it for accuracy. But since 2009, we have finally produced the financial state of the states, which we've done since then. And for the last 6 years, we've done the financial state of the cities. When I testified before the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, I was asked, Sheila, why do you think that governments can put their pension liability on their balance sheet? They can't even calculate their share of the unfunded liability for a multi-employer plan. And I held up our report and said, we've been doing it for years. And fortunately, as Mark mentioned, we won the day, and state and local governments are now required. We developed a large database that includes more than 12 years of data series for government financial information, including assets, liabilities, and pensions. This database is housed at our data-z.org website, along with more than 700 state and local government data series. We believe that this data will be the foundation of the machine-readable government financial database. Truth in Accounting believes citizens deserve and need government data in an easily understandable format. That is why data standards for governments are essential to our representative form of government. Our first panel is Leiser, Barnet, Sherman, and Rob Widigan. Stephanie leads the Michigan Local Government Fiscal Health Project at the University of Michigan, where the Center for Local, State, and Urban Policy is housed. Her general area of interest is public finance, reporting, and financial management, budget and budgeting. She has a particular interest, because she's boring like I am, in state and local government tax policy, business taxation, incentives, and government fiscal health. Our next panelist is Barrett Sherman. His passion is based upon, he created a firm just based on his passion and belief that businesses and enterprises can help have a transformative positive impact on communities. His organization, Tenbar Group, which was founded in 2016, advises mission-driven companies and startups from those who are reported on the New York Stock Exchange to seed capital startups. Mr. Sherman draws upon over 30 years of industrial investment experience building and managing multi-billion-dollar municipal bond investment portfolios for Morgan Stanley and TIAA. Rob Widigan is currently the Chief Deputy CFO of Wayne County, Michigan. Prior to joining Wayne County, Rob served as the CFO of the city of Flint, Michigan. During his tenure, he provided valuable financial guidance to the city administrators, the mayor, and the city council. Please join me in welcoming our speakers, and I think Stephanie will lead us off.
Thank you, Sheila, and thanks for having us here today, and what a great turnout. I'm so excited to see, is it on? No? They told me. This one? No?
I think it is actually.
This one? Yeah. All right. Well, we'll just pass this one around then. So thanks for having me here. I know I'm a little bit of a outlier in this crew, being an academic. So we're going to talk a little bit about how we use data, and as Sheila mentioned, I work at the University of Michigan. We focus on local governments, primarily in Michigan, and on their fiscal health. So as we know, Michigan is the home of Detroit, one of the most famous bankruptcies in recent memory. We've had the Flint water crisis. We have a particularly aggressive state policy around using emergency managers. And so we are very concerned about not just fiscal health overall. Is that one working too? I don't think this one's actually on.
That's the one.
This, yeah. Yep. So like I said, we're looking at local governments in our state, and we are trying to get a comprehensive picture of how healthy they are. We have a survey that goes out at least once a year asking the local officials, how are you doing? How's your fiscal health in particular? And that's honestly the best data source that we have for how fiscal conditions are without going into all of these PDF documents. And so we've had a few research projects where that's exactly what we did. You know, we lined up our survey data and we looked at a whole bunch of documents, PDFs. We had a whole bunch of students spend a lot of time pulling data out of them, and they said, gosh, really, is this the state of the art? This is what we have to do? And we said, yes, this is what we have to do. So it's, you know, sort of viewed as a rite of passage within our field of research that you have to spend a lot of time and you have to go through this big process of extracting data. And so again, you know, we're looking at comprehensively local fiscal health, in particular service solvency, which I called out here, which is just kind of our social science way of saying, can cities and can municipalities provide the services that citizens need? So I realize that a lot of the focus, as Mayor Funkhauser pointed out, is on investors and on capital markets, and we are absolutely interested in that. But we take a much broader view of fiscal health because, you know, what's important to us is, yes, you need to be able to pay, you know, in full and on time, but also you need to be able to provide the services to your citizens. So that's what our research is about. We try to particularly serve local governments in our research center. So we want to provide research that's relevant for them, that's actionable, that they can actually do something about. And again, as I mentioned, with regard to state policy, Michigan hasn't used it very much lately, but we do have kind of a history of pretty aggressive state intervention in local governments. And we feel that, you know, if we could do a better job with the data, if we could get more eyes on the data, particularly from the academic community, then maybe we could be a little bit more proactive about, you know, if we see red flags and we don't let it get to the Flint water crisis state, right? So in order to do that, we need high quality data from the audited financial statements. Our state does a pretty good job compared to other states with collecting data. And so they ask all of our local governments to, once you get your audit, copy a bunch of those things into the state portal, right? And you have to go and do that. And maybe you have an intern do it and they're not, you know, copying the right things. And so, you know, we've kind of given up on using that source of data to do any sort of heavy duty analysis because it's just not reliable enough. So that's kind of the angle that we're coming from as users of the data and what we care about. And I will turn it over to my colleague, Rob. It's not advancing. To talk about Flint, or it's not, the slide did not advance.
Oh, good thing I printed them out.
Yeah. Is it too far from the computer?
Steal your microphone.
Yeah.
I love how we're at a conference about letting technology take over, and technology isn't working, so we printed it. So, you know, kind of this, I'll actually start where Stephanie ended, talking about, you know, having an intern input the data, or the state, Michigan's good at collecting data. Michigan's good at collecting data, period. What do they do with the data? It's all in PDFs. It's all antiquated. We passed Public Act 202 back in 2018, which required local governments to have a pension fund funded at least 60% and OPEB funded at, I think, 50%. I was at Treasury at the time, and we literally shut down all operations and had the entire floor break up all, I can't remember how many local audits, all the way down to your little public library, and pull all the pension data, put it into a report, and get it to the legislatures so that they could pass this act. It took weeks. We had to scrub the audits by hand, you know, just go through, pull the data, look for the data points. And we're you know, to the earlier speaker, you go to the private sector, right? And it's there. In Flint or in Wayne County, we're constantly trying to identify potential, you know, financial issues, right? But that constantly requires us to have updated data. So in Wayne County, the treasurer's elected. If they're behind on their cash reconciliation, I cannot give you a accurate cash flow model, right? I mean, it's all risk to say garbage in, garbage out, right? We only have what we're able to pull. And if the data at Treasury is inaccurate because the intern keyed in the wrong number, I'm shooting over here and I should be over here. So it's all about, in my opinion, I think it's time that we bring local government, if we like it or not, into the 21st century and find a way to accurately tell our story. In Flint, Michigan, you know, we're a city from on its path from crisis to recovery. We probably would not be here without partners such as General Motors or, you know, the Mott Foundation, right? I mean, they provide hundreds of millions of dollars to the city of Flint, but they rely on the city of Flint to have accurate data to tell them what we need. So if you don't have that plan, you're sitting there and Mott comes to the mayor and says, what do you need? And he's going to think of some cool idea that might get reelected, where really we have maybe the need is parks, right? Our parks are in dismay and it needs repairs and the budget's not there for it. But if we don't have the data to say, hey, look, we have a problem over here, we can't keep funding our park system, we can't tell that story. And you know, I think this is all about being able to tell our story, tell it quickly, but more importantly, tell it accurately. So I think that answered the question. All right. Bear with me.
Now we're talking. All right. I'm going to focus on something else other than the financial reporting. What I do at Tenbar is an extension of what I did for my 30-plus years in the municipal bond market. Because I happen to think that the municipal bond market is the greatest market in the world. I can prove it. many people got up this morning and took a shower? Probably. Oh, you don't have to answer that one. Really? Mark, thank you. No, you're a little too serious. You have to laugh. No, but look, probably a water authority provided that, right? Did you drive in or did you commute in? No, the public authority, right? Drop the kids off at school this morning, write a tuition check to a public school. Once again, municipal bonds. There's not a part of our lives, anyone's life in this country, that is not affected in one way, shape, form, or another by a municipal bond and the impact that it has in the community. I financed, tempted to say countless, but at this time must be hundreds of projects around the country. From large projects, Mayo Clinic, Cleveland Clinic, to smaller projects, St. Coletta School, which I believe is right down here in DC. It's a great story, talking about it later. Each one of these had an essential public purpose for its community. What I would really like to have is some sort of data, not just financial data. I would like to have impact data. I want to know how many jobs these bonds financed. I want to know how better healthcare was in a community because of what these bonds financed. There are metrics for this. My private sector clients have them. There's a laundry list of these things. But somehow in the municipal bond market, once again, we don't have that. But it's not the municipal bond market that doesn't have it. What this short circuits and undersells is the communities themselves, particularly small borrowers, who have a huge impact in their community, and for some reason I cannot fathom, don't provide this information, don't track it, or maybe don't think it's important. And reiterate, it's hugely important. Investors want to know that the use of proceeds of their bonds is being used not just to build whatever it's being built, but what is the waterfall effect of that? What's the great story that continues with this? Because it doesn't just stop at the official statement, the original offering documents. It's what happens after that for the next 30 years that this project financed. That's the story. And yes, don't get me wrong, we're not saying financials aren't important. I looked at God knows how many of them over the years. But the real important part of looking at all those financials is that you're doing something that has a direct positive impact on people's lives. Good?
Thank you.
Of course.
So the first question we have from the audience is, who funds your research, Stephanie?
Oh. Who funds our research? So the project that we've done with City of Flint and XBRL in particular is funded by the Mott Foundation, which is a foundation in Flint, Michigan. As Rob mentioned, provides a lot of support to the city and to the state in general. And they've to their credit, they fund a lot of kind of social program type stuff. But when we brought this issue to them, they were all in. They see the vision and they see what sort of an impact this can make. And part of our idea with this project in particular is to say, to shine a light on the city of Flint and say, this is a city in recovery. This is a city doing the right things and moving in the right direction, who's got a vision for, transparency and data and really moving forward. And so, big thanks to the Mott Foundation for their support of our project. More generally speaking, Close Up is part of the University of Michigan. So we have a small staff, a small and mighty staff, and we are part of the Ford School at the University of Michigan. Otherwise, we bring in grants for most of our projects that we do.
Thank you. For Rob, what are your thoughts on making and generating financial data more efficient?
Making it more efficient? Please. It's such a pain right now. It's brutal. Wayne County, we're starting our audit right now. We're October fiscal year, and we're understaffed like every other local government. Funding isn't there. Half of it's done by private firms that we contracted out. I mean, it's just, it's brutal. So if we can find a more efficient way to do this, I mean, Flint, we had no staff. My beard is starting to look like Mark's, you know, getting grayer and grayer as I go on. But I mean, seriously, it's such a pain for me to issue a financial statement then that's what, 18 months to 2 years out of date. So, yeah.
I guess I would personally ask that we know that the data in the government's financial report is not used. Why do you think that putting it into, you know, a machine readable format is you know, then why do you think that'll be used? Nobody seems to care about the data in the financial report.
I can grab that. So I think it's not necessarily that no one cares, is they just don't know what they don't know. So yes. I teach master's students. They're getting their master in public policy. And my class is an elective. So I also teach budgeting, financial management. It's an elective. I get students in their last semester at the Ford School, and they come in and they take this course and they go, oh my gosh, how did I almost get a master's degree in public policy without knowing how money works, how resources move through an organization, and how I can, you know, turn all of my really wonderful ideas about helping the people and social justice and all of these things our students care so passionately about. How do I turn that from resources into actual impact? And so that's what my class is about, and that's what I teach about. And I spend a good half of the semester just saying, this is what a financial statement is. This is how you read it. And it is very hard for them, right? These are masters, they're graduate students at the University of Michigan. And if they can barely understand what's going on in these statements, then I don't know how we should expect anybody else to, right? Anybody who's not trained in accounting. And so I don't know if it's a situation of no one cares what's there. I think it's a situation of no one knows what's there. And, you know, these reports get written, they get sent off to the market, and some analysts read them, but it's not accessible to anyone else. And so if I was able to say, you know, pull up some data for, you know, whatever topic my students are interested in, transportation, whatever, and be like, let me pull some financial data from the city of whatever and tell you, like, how does this look when you're financing a project or when you're doing your budget? And I could make that connection for them. They'd, oh, okay, now I see why I need financial data. But if it's not there and it's not accessible to them, they're just moving right past it, right? And so these are the people who are leading organizations. These are the people who are working in government and doing this work day to day. They just don't have that financial literacy because it's not easily available toolkit for them. And so that's, you know, part of my educational mission too, is to help them understand and help them give the tools to do that. But it's really just such a hard sell when you're trying to sell PDFs.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I would just say, you know, I think you sell it, you know, to what they said in the intro. Everyone has a cell phone. And if you can quickly pull up this data and make it more accessible, people are going to start looking at it more. I mean, you know, if you want to know what's going on in your city, you can listen to your mayor speak about, you know, the state of the city. Cool. It's a bunch of fluff. It's what gets them reelected, right? You're not going to know anything about the city. If you want to know what's going on in your city, you go to the Ackford. And people are going to, as it becomes more accessible, people are going to start to realize this. I mean, you know, my father worked for GM. When I was young, I remember commenting like, man, it must be really cool to be the CEO of GM. And he said, yeah, but if the CEO needs toilet paper, he goes to the CFO, because that's where, I mean, that's where everything happens. It's where the money is. And it's not, you know, it's important. And I think once it becomes more public and once it gets out there more and it's easily accessible, more people are going to want to get into it. And I'll just end with, you know, to Stephanie's point, we are trying to bring on people that can help with the audit or help with the budget. And I can't go to U of M and get a student that's trained in this. I need to go to U of M and get a student that's willing to be taught and then mentor them for 1 to 2 years. And then they can help, you know, be an accountant 1 or an accountant 2. And we just don't have the time or the resources. So it's just this never-ending vicious cycle.
What we find in our work is that, you know, as Mark pointed out, these governments are saying they're balancing their budgets, and citizens, you know, one, they might not know about the financial statement. It's not easily accessible, and so they don't have the data to argue with them. Even reporters don't, you know, they have
Right.
to. I'm always amazed that reporters, you know, just say, you know, the governor says the budget's balanced. They're like, that's what they report, but they don't have any data easily accessible to have data to argue with. A lot of pushback we get is on the FDTA is that the little governments, you know, that, well, they have the finances to do it. But as far as, and you guys might be able to correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of them they don't produce their own financial report. They use outside people to produce those financial reports. Mm-hmm. And wouldn't this make it easier for those people who prepare the statements?
Yeah, in my opinion, yes. Right, like right now, to your point, these local governments are paying. I won't say what Flint paid for their auditor, or who their auditor was, but it was an astronomical amount of money. And I could go to Lansing, Michigan, double the budget, double the population, and they paid half of what we paid for the audit. But the excuse was, well, it's Flint, it's a mess. Cool. Just don't find me at the networking, and I'll go on a rant about that. But lost my train there. But if we can make this more efficient to where I could help, you know, as the CFO or as our team members could help pull this data ourselves, right, and lower the costs that local governments are paying. I mean, if you guys really want to see where the money's going, go audit contractual services in the local government. Yeah. You know, pull your hair out. It's insane. No offense to anyone. But.
I would just add too, so we do at CLOSEP work with a lot of very small governments. In Michigan, even the very smallest townships are required to get an audit every other year. And most of the rest of everyone else is required to get audit every year. And so, you know, you talk to the local officials and they go, oh, why do we have to do this? Why, you know, it costs so much money. We get this and it goes on a shelf. We send it to the state and we never think about it again. And so we have this like demo for them. We say, okay, well, we can, you know, tag your statements and like, let's show you what that looks like. And then we pull up the city of Flint, what we did. And they're like, oh, this is very cool because it's like crib notes, right? So like, I'm going to click on this number. I don't know what, you know, deferred outflows is, but now when I click on that number or even, you know, like restrictions of fund balance, right? You have this hierarchy fund. They don't know necessarily what all that means, but then you can click on it and get the definition right there. And they go, oh, this would be a really great tool to then go present to my board or go present to the city council. And I can say, here's this ACFR, right? Here's this document we've had to spend so much money and hire the auditor and get it done. And like, here's what it means. And if you're able to, instead of just plunk down this several 100-page document in front of them, and then you can like use the data, right? If you've got it in that structured format, you can use the data and present some things that are actually meaningful, that have some context and definition to them, then, you know, that is where the value is added. Yeah, and that makes a difference for the very small governments, as you said.
Yeah, Stephanie also mentioned that, you know, in her, that they have to submit the data to, I think, yes, it was Rob, that have the local governments have to submit the data to the state. And in Illinois, what we found is we worked with the Cook County, so these local governments have to submit it to the state, and then they also have to submit it to Cook County. And as you mentioned, the data is, we didn't use the data either. It's so bad. So XBRL, I think, could, you know, help with that. For Barnet, do you anticipate that the digitization of the financial data would lower the borrowing cost overall once it's all implemented?
Yes. Oh, you want more? No, I'm just
basis points.
A little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. No, I think the comments from Rob and Stephanie are really spot on with that, particularly just one quick detour on this. For those, there are local governments in the audience here, right? That are some, don't they? My understanding is that initially the financial information is all digital anyway, right? Isn't it electronic with that? They collect it. I mean, there's accounting systems and so forth. So let me sort of have this right. You've got it electronically, and then you put it into 30-year-old technology that was literally from the last century that you can't read, and then somebody has to go back in again and scrape it to pull it out? Yeah. Right. That's how it works, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. Just want to make sure I have my facts right. Look, I didn't go to MIT, but I think I can short-circuit that process a little bit.
Oh.
All right. I'm sorry. What was the original question? Yes, I know what it was. You're right. Yeah, no, I think it absolutely does, because the better you can tell your story to investors, the more investors you can attract, particularly if you're a, everyone focuses on the smaller governments or the more infrequent issuers. They do. I mean, they have a real issue sometimes in getting good rates because, and depending on where the market is, I mean, every once in a while the market goes nuts and who knows why. But the reason why is because, look, if you're not getting regular information, well, when this comes out in the primary market and I'm an investor, I want a liquidity premium for this. I'm not getting good information. I know this bond's never going to trade again. It's going to go into, bond heaven and whatnot. So, oh, good. Some people know the phrase. So what do I want for that? Well, I want a premium on my yield because I'm taking on more risk or perceived more risk and I'm losing liquidity. But also, it also means bigger investors aren't going to come in because who wants to keep track of all this? I've got enough pressures on my fees. I'm trying to cut fees down. I'm competing with everybody under the sun here in a super saturated market. So if I'm going to buy any bond, I want a bond that's more in the index, something that's more liquid that I can trade. But if I'm a separately managed account manager and I'm looking to pick up yield, I'm going to be buying, I presume I'm going to be buying the living hell out of smaller issuers because that's where the yield is going to be. And guess what? Smaller issuers, for no fault of their own, are now stuck with a higher interest rate for what? 10 years, 20 years, 30, whatever the length of the bond is. So I'll tell you what, keep telling me why it's so expensive to convert over to XBRL. But the real question to my mind is, how much is it costing you now to maintain these outdated and outmoded systems? Put a number on that one. Oh, you did put a number on that a little bit because where the consultants come in, which, by the way, my company is happily taking on new clients. But that's not but that's the point. Is that my wife really wants the bathrooms redone. I'm just not saying. Anyway, no, you get the point. Is that this is costing a lot of money now. Let's get out of this mind frame that it's going to cost, that somehow this is an additional cost. It's the wrong frame. It's the wrong question. And candidly, for some cynics, it's misleading. Let's focus on solving the problem. Let's focus on getting this done so we can have this for all communities to report in on a regular and straight basis and actually pay, to my mind, much better rates because the true risk will be now known to the market because they'll have the data to actually do the risk analysis.
And just one question, I would like for time, just a one-word answer is if one local government is digitizing theirs and one isn't, do you think that down the road that will affect their interest rates and all that?
100,000%, yes.
Okay, and then just a rhetorical question as we wrap this up, do we, like Mark was saying, maybe perhaps the governments don't want this data out. So do you think that's part of the issue?
When I was in Flint, I used to I would do spreadsheets, build a workbook on pension liability and how much money we needed to stay afloat and not face insolvency. And I'd send it to the state budget director and say, hey, it's going to go tipsy-turvy here if we don't do something. So me personally, I don't have an issue with it. If you want to know, let me know. I'll build your workbook and send it to you. But I do sense that some governments, yes, are inclined to hold their cards very close to their chest.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to our next panel. If everybody can thank this panel.